In the occupied West Bank town of Turmasaya, in the Ramallah district, a horrific scene unfolds. A horde of Israeli settlers violently chase down Palestinians picking olives. A settler wearing a mask swings a club at a woman in the field, knocking her to the ground.
Hey! Oh my God. Hey! Hey!
She ends up in hospital, her face covered in blood. He goes on to hit one of the activists that had joined the farmers in an attempt to protect them from settler attacks just like this. The moment is captured on video by American journalist Jasper Nathaniel. It's his voice you hear on camera. He had joined a group of Palestinian farmers on their way that day to harvest their olive trees. It's the start of the olive season in Palestine. Jasper sees the settlers and asks Israeli soldiers to provide him and the farmers safe passage. The soldiers say they'll handle it, but then they leave. It turns out to be an ambush.
The soldiers set us up for this attack. Blocked on one side, getting out by settlers with guns. There's one other way to get out. There's soldiers at the top. And they said, yes, come on. There were two settlers up there. And as soon as we got there, soldiers jetted off in their Jeep, left us alone with the settlers.
The video of the incident went viral. The Israeli army later told the media that they had dispersed the confrontation and condemned the violence. But Jasper, who witnessed and documented the entire ordeal, said none of this was true. Because of this, Palestinian olive pickers in the town said that for once, they were able to finally harvest their fields without being harassed.
It's because your video yesterday, that's why today it doesn't come.
The settlers?
The settlers, yeah.
That's good to know.
The fact is, this is not an isolated incident. It just so happens to be the one that's so well documented and reported widely in the media. But settler attacks on Palestinian olive pickers and their groves have been happening systematically for years. This is Beyond the Headlines, and I'm your host, Nada AlTaher. In this episode, we look at the recent spike of assaults on Palestinian farmers as they mark the start of the olive harvest and the impact of Israel's occupation and agricultural land grabs. The olive tree has long been a symbol of resistance and rootedness for Palestinians. Almost half of all cultivated land across Palestine is planted with olive trees. The harvest itself is more than just a farming season. It's a social and cultural event. Plus, thousands of tons of olives can be yielded on a good year, making it a crucial financial lifeline for farmers. I speak about the rise in settler attacks with Ajith Sunghay, head of the UN High Commissioner for the Human Rights Office in the Occupied Palestinian Territory. So, the olive harvest season has just begun. What sort of incidents have been documented by the UN in these short weeks alone? What kind of attacks are we talking about in terms of frequency, severity, and how do they compare to the years before?
I think two things. One, the number of incidents that has clearly escalated. There have been at least about 757 or so incidents in the last 2 weeks. And they vary. They vary from refusing entry to a Palestinian to his own farmland to pick olives, for example, or in groups proactively attacking Palestinians and family who try to do their harvesting. That could be anything from unarmed but physical fist fighting to carrying weapons, which we have seen increasingly these days, firing at Palestinians, to physically beating with sticks and other forms of violations. What we have noticed compared to the previous years is the intensity as well as the frequency. So physical beatings, injuries, in certain cases, even if it leads to death, is not something that is deterring the Israeli settlers from doing what they want to do.
We often see activists accompanying olive pickers during the harvest season. Is this a common practice, and why do they insist on going with them?
There have been activists before. It's not new. We call it protective presence. The belief is, and this is something that's worked in several parts of the world, and it used to work to an extent in West Bank as well. So the understanding is that if you have volunteers, foreign nationals, NGOs physically present in the space where, potentially Israeli settlers can attack Palestinians, this can deter them from doing so. However, all that has changed over the last couple of years. And this year in particular, you have seen now 32 volunteers who've been arrested, detained, and are in the process of being deported, being tagged as terrorists. So the narrative has changed. Those who have come here to make sure that there is no violence are now being called as terrorists. So these are activists who have tried to reduce violence against Palestinians are now themselves under threat. And it's not just being deported. In the past, we have seen cases where the volunteers themselves who are there to provide protective presence have been physically attacked. And in many cases, not necessarily in the case of Olive Harvest, have been shot and killed as well. And the same goes to journalists too. Those who have gone there to cover are under extreme danger and threat.
What does that tell us about the way that things are changing?
Well, a few things. I think number one, there is no fear on the part of Israeli settlers. And there's a reason for that. Couple of reasons. One, lack of accountability, impunity for many, many, many years now. You can do what you want to do and be assured of protection, and there won't be legal consequences. The other one is clear backing by some of the highest authorities on the Israeli government side, which embolden these settlers to do what they want to do. And there's a clear message saying, look, this is your land. You can go and pitch a property or a tent or a caravan and then expand that into a settlement, and you have the backing of the state. The other one is you have, in many instances, Israeli Defense Force standing next to settlers, making sure that they are protected as opposed to the occupied population being protected, and that's the Palestinians. The last one is the focus is on Gaza. So the eyes are on Gaza. So there's a lot happening in West Bank, which is going a bit unreported, which is going a bit unnoticed to an extent, and all that is conducive for the settlers to do what they want to do. Bigger picture is the message that comes from Israel that says we want to annex or to consolidate our annexation, or the Israel's annexation of West Bank.
And this is exactly what I just wanted to ask you. The Knesset has just approved a preliminary bill to apply Israeli sovereignty in the West Bank, in so many words, amounting to annexation. How does this affect Palestinian farmers?
We have to go back to the International Court of Justice advisory opinion of 2024, which says already parts of West Bank have been annexed. It doesn't exactly define which parts they are, but we can deduce that these are the parts where you already have settlements, and many parts of East Jerusalem as well. That's been annexed. The question that we talk about in these new legislation, private bills that you've been talking about, is consolidation of annexation. So it is further annexation of West Bank. And the General Assembly passed a resolution in 24 saying by 2025, August, September, they have to completely withdraw. And that has not happened. So the two bills propose to consolidate annexation in further parts of West Bank. We have to keep a very close eye on that. This is a dangerous precedent, and we have to draw links between the money that is being invested in expansion of settlements, the rhetoric that comes from Israel and the government of Israel talking about annexation, and these measures that are being introduced and pushed legally to further annex West Bank.
What is the UN doing about all of this?
Look, I mean, UN has been raising alarms, reporting on all these things for many years now. We don't need a particular journalist to raise these issues. We have constantly talked about this, raised alarms, asked member states to take concrete actions. The UN is part of a larger community and network. We want member states to take action in the end. So that is not sufficiently being addressed in our opinion. And there are two parts of the UN. The part of the UN, which is us as the Secretariat, that we have a role to monitor and report to the General Assembly, to the Security Council, to the Human Rights Council, and such bodies. And then the part of the UN which is decision-making and acting ones, whether it's the Security Council or the General Assembly or the Human Rights Council, and those are the member states, and they also need to act. And that's where sometimes there is problem and not enough sufficient pressure.
For generations, Palestinians have been struggling to live normally under the threat of occupation and settler violence. Since October 2023, 1,000 Palestinians in the West Bank at least have been killed in Israeli attacks. Despite this, farmers insist on remaining rooted on their land. Abbas Milhem is the executive director of the Palestinian Farmers Union. He speaks to me about the impact of Israel's policies on Palestinian agriculture. Abbas, what makes the olive tree such an important symbol for Palestinians? Why has it become such an icon of Palestinian struggle against the occupation?
In Palestine, olive trees is not just a sector. It's heritage and it's culture. Palestinians have been farming olive trees and harvesting since the past 5,000 years. It became over history, over this long period, as part of their heritage, part of their culture. In Palestine, the olive tree is a symbol of love, symbol of peace, symbol of hope, symbol of life, symbol of economy. It's very important to note, for example, here that in Palestine these days, we have around 140,000 families who live entirely and partially on olive oil production. It's almost in every single house, they either produce or share the production of olive oil. So it's part of our existence. If you want to show that you are seeking for peace, it's enough for a Palestinian to hold the branch of olive tree. So it's a source of many things, and it's became inseparable part of our culture and our heritage. It's national ceremony when we have olive harvesting season. It used to be before, the current situation of the increased settler violence against our farmers. Farming families will spend entire month in their olive groves harvesting the olive harvest. It's like their joy time.
And with the season, settler attacks have increased against farmers and people picking the olives. And it's often reported that these settler attacks happen under the protection of Israeli soldiers. Can you explain this whole scenario for people who don't live in the West Bank? Why are there Israeli soldiers in these areas in the first place?
We all know that Palestine is still under occupation, and we did not have our freedom yet. Although there was a so-called peace agreement signed in 1994 between Palestinian PLO, Palestinian Liberation Organization, and the Israeli cabinet at that time. And that Oslo agreement was meant to be only a transitional period for 5 years. And now, look, we're still waiting for that peace to prevail. So we are still under occupation. And that means that Israeli army is still, controlling the entire West Bank areas. And second, Israeli occupation government benefited from that time by expanding settlements. Number of settlers that used to be in 1994 during the time of signing the peace agreement was around 200,000 settlers. Now we have 750,000 settlers in West Bank. And all these settlers have been deployed on already owned land by Palestinian farmers. So these settlement expanded on the account of our land, and they are occupying the most fertile soil and all our natural resources we need for farming practices. And this occupation is there mainly, first, to support the expansion of settlements, deploying new settlers with the aim to control and to annex the entire West Bank area. And due to that, the army and settlers, they aim to get an empty land where farmers are not there. They conduct and commit daily attacks and crimes against Palestinians with an attempt to uproot farmers from their farmland area for settlement expansion purposes. That's why those settlers are conducting crimes. They attack Palestinians when they try to access their land or their water resources. They uproot, damage, or destroy their agricultural projects, including uprooting, damaging, and burning olive groves. Unfortunately, all these attacks by settlers are conducted and fully backed by the Israeli army. And any Palestinians who try to defend himself against these attacks, they are either shot or arrested.
How have these attacks changed in nature and scale since October 7? I mean, this is something that farmers have been subjected to for decades. But has anything changed in the past 2 years?
We in the Palestinian Farmers Union, we have a special documentation unit that document the Israeli settler violations and crimes against our Palestinian farmers. Number of settler attacks before October 7, 2023 was around the average of 3 attacks per day. From October 7 until this moment, we're talking about a jump increase in these attacks that reached up to 13 to 14 attacks per day. And this describes how settlers benefited from this genocidal war the Israeli government conducted against Gaza, along with the ethnic cleansing war happening now in West Bank to ethnic cleansing Palestinian from their farmland area. These crimes increased with the purpose of annexing West Bank. And maybe you heard in the news yesterday, the Israeli parliament, the Knesset members, they voted for the sake of annexing West Bank for Israel. That would mean the entire West Bank area would be under the control of the Israeli settlers. From October 7 until now, it varied between physical attacks against farmers through shooting them while they were harvesting their olive crops, like what happened with Bilal Saleh, for example, a Palestinian farmer who was harvesting his olives in his farm. He was attacked by 6 settlers and they shot him with 7 bullets in his chest in front of his wife and his children. In addition to other large number of farmers who were injured while they were trying to access their land. And the current now olive harvest season is becoming so bloody one. Most of our farmers now are unable to access their farmland areas to harvest their crops. And not only this, the olive is being now harvested by settlers under the full support and coverage by the Israeli army.
You spoke a little bit about annexation. What policies does Israel use to consolidate its control over Palestinian agricultural land?
One of the tools they use is to announce an area as a security area. And for them, a security area means Palestinians are not allowed to access that area. But settlers, they can access that area. So it is an area announced to be security area just for the sake of settlers. And second, they try to apply laws from the Ottoman Empire period on the Palestinian land. In the time of the Ottoman Empire, in order to encourage farmers to cultivate their land, they issued this law. And that law means that if a Palestinian farmer does not cultivate the land will be rented from him for the sake of another farmer who would like to cultivate that land and generate income. But what the Israeli army do, they use this issue smartly. They deny our access to our land for 3 years. We couldn't cultivate the land for 3 years because they are blocking us from reaching and accessing our land. And after 3 years, they say, this land is empty, it's not cultivated. Then they confiscate the land and they give it to a settler. If they did not manage to apply this law, they just simply issue a military order to confiscate the land for the purpose of settlement expansion. Let's remember and know that this Israeli government is based on a coalition of settlers. There are 2 settler leaders in this government. One of them is the Minister of Finance, who is financing the settlement expansion, and the other settler leader is the Minister of National Security. And this ministry, they distributed 175,000 machine guns among settlers in order to encourage them to attack and to shoot Palestinians while they're trying to get access to their land.
We hear a lot about Area C. Why is this important, and why is agricultural land there particularly the target of Israeli settler attacks?
Unfortunately, the land in Palestine is divided into 3 categories. Area A, which is the city area, and then Area B, where all towns and villages are located under this type of category, Area B, and then Area C. Area C forms like 60% of the entire West Bank area. And this Area C is the storage of agriculture practicing. It is the storage of our natural resources. It is the area where all our fertile soil land is located. And it's all unfortunately categorized as Area C under the full control of the Israeli army. But Palestinians, when they signed the Oslo Agreement, where these areas was classified into 3 categories, they were assuming that in 5-year period, all the areas will be transmitted to the Palestinians and Palestinian state will be established and we will have like self-determination. But unfortunately, until now, that part of the agreement was not implemented, and Israeli occupation governments, successive governments, they used the control of this entire Area C for the sake of settlement expansion. From October 7 until now, Israeli occupation established another 114 new settlement posts in Area C. And that meant to control almost 20% of the entire West Bank area.
How far back does this practice go, and how has it impacted the farmers themselves? Did they think about finding another profession, moving to the city, maybe where it's safer for them?
Look, farmers are not leaving their land and will not leave their land. They continue. It's an act of resistance with the big slogan all our farmers have in mind, that if you uproot 1 tree, we will plant 10. And if we are subject to harassment, we will never surrender and give up. The attacks against farmers have been since the past decades, but farmers, they never stop going back to their farmland area, despite all the risk. For them, die or live. This is their land. And olive tree for a Palestinian farmer is exactly like a child. And agriculture in Palestine has become an act of resistance. But our farmers are resisting in a different form. They're resisting by planting. The question, what we need to do, and this is the more important part of the whole issue, because without holding those settlers and this government accountable against all the crimes, nothing will stop them. One of the things this government, the Israeli government, need to be subject to is sanctions. This government needs to be sanctioned. It's a government that behaves above the international law, and they conduct crimes against humanity and international war crimes. It has been proven. And all what is needed now from the whole world is not words. Words are not serving anymore. We need actions, and actions that would really sanction all settlers and sanction the government that support these settlers and support the settlement expansion.
That's it for Beyond the Headlines. This episode was produced by Ban Barqawi and audio engineered by Arthur Edison. Dua Farid is our editor, and I'm your host, Nada AlTaher. Thank you for listening.